Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us. Welcome to our February user call. I'm very happy to have all of you here today. My name is Dalia and I work as a community manager here at Kong. Today, we're going to talk about Kong Gateway 3.6 that just came out. We're going to get all the new updates. We have a little surprise for you. And we have Michael and Veena with us today. I will let them introduce themselves. This webinar is recorded, so you will be able to find the recording on our YouTube channel. I will include the link in the chat so you can subscribe and watch it afterwards if you wish. And let's take all the questions at the end. You will see a Q&A function on the bottom, so please insert the questions in the Q&A and not in the chat. And yeah, with that, Veena, please take it away from here.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This is the 3.6 release update call. So I'll be talking about the enterprise updates in the release. And Michael, I'm a product manager on the Kong Gateway team. And welcome again. I'll hand it off to Michael for introduction.
Thank you, Veena. I'm Michael. I'm also a product manager here at Kong, and I'll be taking over the second half of this presentation, talking primarily about the features of the OSS release.
Right. Thank you. All right, let's begin the agenda today. As mentioned, I'll talk about the enterprise features. I do have a demo of one of the features in the release. We'll look at the demo, and Michael will talk about the OSS features. And there is a special announcement, so stay tuned and we can answer your questions at the end. Let's get into it. So as we have done in the past for a couple of releases, there is usually a theme that we follow, right? So there's a couple of themes in the release as well. One is focused on security. We have a couple of features addressing that security concerns where you are, as an API provider, you're able to offer better API security on the APIs for your customers. So there's the security feature focused release items. And the other theme in the release is developer efficiency and overall simplifying the API management. So we have kind of features addressing all these concerns in the release. So the first two in the security related enhancements. One is support for mTLS authentication in using the OpenID Connect plugin, which is our very popular plugin if you are wanting Kong to orchestrate all the security related workflows with the identity manager, right? So this is a common requirement from a lot of our customers, such as banks and other financial providers, where they need to have zero trust in all of their stack, right? So whether Kong is talking to an identity provider, they want that to happen over mTLS because there is a zero trust mandate that they have to adhere to. So this feature is one that allows customers to offer that zero trust architecture, follow the zero trust principles. So with this feature, what Kong will do is anytime it is talking to the identity provider, be it for if you are familiar with the OpenID Connect plugin, it enables a lot of these grant authorization grant flows, right? So in any of those flows, anytime Kong is talking or communicating with the IDP, that happens over mTLS. So it's when we talk about mTLS, it's all about security certificates. So there is a bit of a setup, but that's the benefit that every component is communicating over mTLS. So that's a picture on the right to show how we set up the mTLS between IDP and Kong in any of the flows that you configure in the OIDC. Another enhancement in the security focus is something called pushed authorization request. Now, OpenID Connect or OAuth 2 is all about specs, right? So there are improvements and things coming constantly improving the existing framework. So pushed authorization request is another spec which mainly affects one of the flows in the OpenID Connect or the OAuth flows. That is the authorization code grant flow, right? So another open banking driven requirement, because a lot of banks and financial institutions, they have to adhere to this spec when they expose their APIs, right? Open banking APIs. So in this flow, what happens is you can think of this as a one-time password, right? So we all use our mobile phones where we get that one-time password. Then you have to use both your credentials as well as that one-time password to further get access, right? So this is something like that, wherein when we enable this, the Kong, again, this is another feature of the OpenID Connect plugin. Kong will orchestrate that extra step of registering the call, the authorization request call, and the IDP sends back an ACK. It acknowledges that registration, and then Kong has to make another request. The actual workflow starts at number 3 when it starts the authorization code flow by making a request to the authorized endpoint, along with that, the ACK that was sent back by the IDP. And there's an expiry as well. So if it doesn't happen within that time, then it has to restart all over again. So there's another three-legged, already to the three-legged auth, you're adding another enhancement to make sure nobody gets in between Kong and IDP, right? At any point, there's no middleman. So that's another requirement driven by open banking. On the developer experience and overall simplifying the API management aspect, we had a feature in a couple of releases where we introduced a core entity called consumer groups, right, to manage the consumers. When it released, I believe it supported only a couple of plugins supported that feature, wherein you could scope that plugin to the consumer groups. So with this 3.6, we're adding a few more plugins that are now able to, you're able to scope the plugins to the consumer groups, right? So like the proxy cache, IP restriction, request termination, and ACLs. So this is where you have consumers and you have some commonality among those consumers, so you can group them together, and you're applying or scoping that plugin at the consumer group level. So that way, Kong, you don't end up with a lot of plugins, so there's no repeated configuration. It simplifies how Kong will, maintain that table of plugins that are executed on each request based on the scoping. So it improves the performance and efficiency overall. And for the developer, there is less maintaining, repeated configurations for each consumer. On the secrets management side, we have introduced support for various secret managers like Azure, AWS Secret Manager, GCP, as well as Hashicorp. This is one of the core features of the enterprise. With this release, we incorporated the app role authentication for Hashicorp. So now anytime Kong needs to fetch the secrets from Hashicorp Vault, it can use the app role, which is another robust security measure mechanism, authentication mechanism that Hashicorp offers and is suitable for automated workflows, right? So now that is possible with Kong as well. Another notable mention for the enterprise in 3.6 is the FIPS certification. So we got certified. The Kong Gateway is now FIPS certified. The certificate is available in our website. So if you have a requirement or an environment where you have to use FIPS validated products, you can certainly reference that certificate, and you will have compliance. You'll be adhering to those compliance as well. All right. So I mentioned about the demo. So I will be demoing the mTLS in the OIDC plugin. Just to walk through the demo first. So it's a lot of setup, right? So there's Kong and the IDP. First, you need to establish the certificates on both ends to make sure that the CA certificate is common, and then you're establishing that client certificates that Kong will present to the IDP in this connection. IDP can validate that, as well as creating API clients on the IDP side as well. So I'll walk through this, talk about the setup first, and then we'll look at the feature in action. So what I have here, this is my identity provider. So as part of, I have created a couple of clients. One is an API client. We'll be using both of them. And the other one is the Kong. So what we are doing here is setting up Kong to use mTLS whenever it tries to communicate with the IDP. So the main thing to note here is, I have set the token endpoint authentication method to use that client certificate, right? So this is applicable to this is all the other endpoints as well, like introspection and where the Kong is establishing that communication and querying the IDP APIs. So it's going to use the client certificate, and I've also noted as part of the setup, you'll have to say what the CN is. So I've generated certificates, used the name Kong, and that's the CN on the certificate that IDP needs to check to ensure that it's the right client. And at the same time, and on the server side, on the authorization server side, I've uploaded the certificate, the CA that IDP can use to verify the client certificate presented by Kong. So there's the CA that's been uploaded as well. So that's kind of the certificate setup on the IDP side and the client creation. So I will fetch. I'll talk about the Kong side setup, but these two are the clients that I'm going to use. Right, so now let's look at the Kong setup. Again, same thing established here. I've uploaded the certificate that Kong should use when it makes that connection to the IDP, right? And also there is a CA, but I'm going to turn that off on the Kong side, where it doesn't need to verify the IDP's server certificate. But I do have it in case, and this is the contract, right? So you're using the same CA, but both can validate. So this is all the certificate management setup. It's a bit of a setup. I have the certificate. I have a simple service created. This is a service on the internet. Hopefully it'll stay up for the demo. This is an F1 database that you can query. Has various endpoints. So I have one route exposed, which is the driver's endpoint. Right, and right now I don't have any plugins. We will walk through the plugin configuration as well, but I want to first show that the setup is as vanilla as it can be. So let me just grab my curl command. So there's no authentication. So so the API it returns a response. So this is without authentication in place. So once I turn on, if I wanted to protect this, I would apply the OIDC plugin or any other plugin, but here we're talking about mTLS, so OIDC. So let's enable that, and I'll walk through the setup as well. So the Kong client that I created, that is the client ID. There is no secret because we're going to use the mTLS as the secret, the client certificate as the secret. And I have selected introspection as the auth method, right? So all the client connections that are making that API request, they are going to present the token that they have obtained from the IDP. And that is the authentication method for the clients. And when Kong gets it, Kong needs to verify that it is still an active token. So it goes to the IDP over mTLS and verifies that the token is still active, right? So we'll see that. There is a couple of things to enable in the advanced. I'll just search for it. So there's so we have to verify or refer the certificate that the plugin needs to use when it's making a connection. So that's the certificate ID from the previous certificate screen. And also I'm turning off the TLS client auth. I don't want Kong to verify the server certificate, IDP server certificate. So that's just another, if you wanted, we could do that. But for this demo, I just turn it off. And I'm setting the client authentication, matching it to what is set on the client side on the IDP, right? So the token TLS client auth. So that's all the setup that is required to enable the flow. So with this, let's go back to the screen. So now, if I start again, I should get an unauthorized message, right? So I'm getting an unauthorized message. I need to pass in a token that I obtained from because the introspection auth method is turned on. So I'm going to first obtain a token. Let me grab the call command as that second API client, right? So this is just making a call to the token endpoint and passing my client ID and secret that for that client as a authorization basic header. And I will get an access token that I can pass in my call to the previous. Let me just clear the screen so we can see in this call. So here I'm passing that token as a bearer token. Authorization. Let me make sure the spelling is right. So now with that in place, Kong validates that token, actually makes a call to the IDP to make sure it's active, and then proxies the request. We could look at the logs to see that the tokens are loaded and things like that on the Kong side. So that's one way to show that it's not working is to change the CN on that and say you set it to something random, then this call will fail, right? So it ensures that you're actually, Kong is going, that the connection is over mTLS in that case. That's all I had in my demo. Michael, please take over. I think that's the end of my demo.
It helps if I unmute myself, doesn't it? Thank you, Veena. Thank you for the demo. I'm glad the demo gods were smiling on you today and it all worked. I'm going to spend a few minutes now talking about the things that you need to know about Kong open source. The first is that we've got a new home for our packages. Now, this actually happened in July last year, but the deprecation date for download.conkhq.com is rapidly approaching. And I wanted to make sure that you've all migrated your installations to Cloudsmith. One of the awesome things about this migration is that it drove us to add automated testing to our docs. So every single installation page on docs.conkhq.com is automatically tested with GitHub Actions. In CI, we spin up Docker containers and we install Kong Gateway from a package and from the published repos automatically. And we do this for both AMD and ARM builds. You can see that all the instructions work based on this lovely CI output on the slide. In 3.6, we added Debian 12 builds. So if any of you are constantly upgrading and you've upgraded to Debian Bookworm, you can now use the Debian repository in Cloudsmith to get your Debian 12 packages. Gateway 3.6 also brings some brand new performance testing. We've published the test framework as an open source repo, and you can see that Kong Gateway can handle 137,000 requests per second with a 6 millisecond latency. That's pretty awesome, if you ask me. And that is just one route, no consumers, no plugins. So that is the absolute maximum. But even if we start adding a more representative test case, things like let's add a rate limit, let's have basic authentication with 100 routes and 100 consumers, we're still getting 90,000 requests a second and 9 milliseconds of latency. Like, those are incredible numbers. If you want to try reproducing this, that testing repo is public for everyone to use. And we tested on Kubernetes running on the AWS. But if you end up running the testing repo, please let us know. I'd love to hear what kind of numbers you're seeing on different kinds of hardware. Next up is more performant routing. Now, imagine that you've got an API that calculates shipping for a product to a specific country. This URL has two parameters. the product ID and the country to ship to. And previously, you'd have to define this route as a regex if you wanted to match dynamic data. This works, but if you have a lot of regexes and a lot of routes, it can slow things down because Con Gateway has to compile every single regex and then iterate over every route, testing the incoming request against that regex. Regexes are slow. So in Con Gateway 3.6, we've added new capability to the expressions router that lets you compare specific segments of a URL path. This leads to increased performance due to being able to do simple string matching. So we can check if the first segment is products and the third segment is shipping. Now it says 0 and 2 because it's 0 indexed, but we're checking the first and third and then passing that request through to the upstream to extract the ID and country. So this is significantly faster than regex compilation and matching. All right, the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time for that special announcement that we've been teasing. We've taken Kong, one of your favorite tools. We've made it work with something that is getting more and more use within businesses. AI. That's right. Kong can now be used as an AI gateway to help manage AI usage within your organization. Kong Gateway 3.6 launched 6 new plugins focused on AI. We've got AI Proxy, which lets you call a configured LLM with mediated security and tuning parameters. And it standardizes the request and response formats. So no matter whether you're talking to OpenAI, whether you're talking to Mistral, maybe you're talking to Llama 2, Kong can normalize all of those requests. So you just integrate once and you can use whichever LLM you want. We've got the prompt decorator, which allows you to add prompts to the beginning or end of a user input. This lets you set context specific to your business without every user having to do it manually. We've got the AI prompt code, which allows you to add a list of allowed or blocked expressions. So if you want to make sure that AI is being used within certain parameters, prompt codes can help give you some governance around how people are making requests to the LLMs. Prompt engineering is quite difficult the first time you do it, trying to give it all the right context and trying to describe the correct output format and things like that. So the AI prompt template plugin lets people that are experienced writing prompts write the prompt and adds, it's a little bit like Mad Libs. So there's slots where people can insert their values into the prompt. And that's what the AI prompt template does. So you have one person authoring the prompt, and then everyone just sends specific values that get inserted before being sent to the LLM. And then finally, we have AI request and response transformer. This is AI augmented versions of our existing request and response transformer plugins. So if you wanted to do things like take the upstream XML response from Veena's F1 API and convert it to JSON using an LLM, you could use the AI response transformer. 6 brand new plugins available today in Kong open source. That was a lot of words. Let's just see it in action so that you can actually see the power of the new AI plugins. So if you want to get started, you can do that. You can do exactly what I'm doing on screen. This get.konghq.com/AI will bootstrap a Kong Gateway plugin and associate Kong Gateway instance using Docker and all the associated plugins. So yes, I want to continue. Now I just want to do it locally. And I'm not going to use a hosted model. I'm just going to enable 2 local models that I have running on my machine. I'm going to use Mistral and Llama 2. So this will download the Kong Gateway Docker images. It will start a database and start Kong Gateway for you. And then it's going to configure a couple of routes. So here, it gives me a sample request. I'm actually going to change this because I didn't configure OpenAI. I'm going to make it call Llama 2. So now the LLM is running in the background and it's going to tell me what Kong Gateway is. There we are. And we can see that this comes back with an object, with usage, and with choices. Actually, let me add this to JQ so we can see it just a little bit easier. So we're using the Llama 2 model. We've got the message, the content, which role the LLM was acting in, how many tokens. What's really cool about this is I can go and change Llama 2 to Mistral, and it just works. I don't have to learn a new API. I don't have to integrate different request and response formats. I just change the name of the model that I want to use, and I'm using an entirely different LLM. This is just the start. It's like if I go to the Kong manager and take a look at one of those routes, let's use Llama. We can see that there is an AI proxy plugin enabled. I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to add the prompt decorator and say, anytime take the response and translate it to French, and French from France rather than French from, say, Canada. So now I've got two routes, two plugins on this route. The first is AI Proxy, which handles the request and response normalization, and that prompt decorator, which will translate to French. So now if I rerun this using the Llama, here's the translation of what is Kong Gateway in French. So this is a good example of where my prompt wasn't specific enough. So let's go back and try it again. So let's edit that configuration. Let's try and simplify it and try again. There we are. Hello, Kong Gateway is a service for gateways. My French is not very good, but you can see it's taken that response from the Llama 2 model and translates it to French, even though I didn't say anything about that in the message that I actually sent to the API. This lets you build context as an organization and automatically inject that into all AI usage for your developers and every other team using it. I'm going to stop the sharing there because I think we've got a couple of questions. Andre, can I please post the perf test link here? Yes, I can. I will do that whilst we hand over to Veena for the next question. Veena, can you see the Q&A?
Yeah. So yes, so there are certain flows when you enable the things like the auth code, grant flow, introspection, client credentials. Those are the flows where actually Kong is going and reaching out to the IDP. In those flows, yes, whenever any API is protected by that, Kong will use the OpenID Connect, the mTLS auth, if you have configured it. So by default, it's client secret and basic. So Kong always goes, uses the client basic auth when it makes the contact to the IDP. But with this mTLS, it would be using the client certificates. And I think that's a follow-up question from the discovery endpoint as well. So I'm checking to see if we already extended to discovery as well, because discovery endpoints are usually open. They don't have any authentication, so anyone can look at the discovery endpoints. But if in case you're protecting even the discovery endpoints, I don't see why we couldn't extend this to discovery. But I don't know if we already do that. I'm checking that. If I hear back, I'll answer that in the chat as well.
Thank you, Veena. Andre, is the AI plugin available in OSS? Yes. All 6 of them are shipped in Kong open source. So that script that I ran, get.conkhq.com/AI, you can run that right now. And it will download Kong and use the plugins. So you can also head to GitHub and see the source code for those plugins as well. That is all the questions in the Q&A section. I will give you a couple of minutes just to see if there's any more. Yes, I see a few in the chat. Will there be a recording? Yes, this will be published to the Kong YouTube channel, usually within a couple of hours, but I'll let Dalia answer that one.
Thank you so much, Michael and Veena. Let's see if you have any other questions. And in the meantime, I will post a link to the YouTube channel where you can find the recording. Just a second.
There is another question. Can the content in the API call be in a different language? Yes. It depends which language is the underlying LLM. I'm assuming you're talking about AI here. It depends which languages the underlying LLM understands. But yeah, Kong has no restrictions on languages that you can send through the API.
Okay. One more minute. Let's see if anyone else wants to ask something. In the meantime, the YouTube channel link is in the chat. Then our user call for March will be on March 5th. It's going to be on Kong plugins. Very interesting topic. So please join us for that as well. And yeah, let's see if we have any last questions. Well, I think you both explained it so well that no more questions now.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you both so much for the... Oh, is there? There's one more.
Can we customize the Kong, I guess, with login themes? I mean, I'm not sure I understand the question. No follow-up. Amit, I should use API-able. So, Amit, if you email community@conkhq.com, we can take it from there. I think we need a little bit more context to answer the questions that you're asking.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Veena, for the great presentation. And thank you, everyone who joined us today. It was a pleasure having you here. You will find the recording, in a couple hours on YouTube. And I hope to see you at our next user call next month. I hope you have a great evening, great day, and see you soon.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Bye.